Welcome. Today we're going to be talking about cognitive warfare and cognitive operations. What is cognitive warfare and cognitive operations? What's the history of cognitive warfare weaponry? And what's the difference between cognitive warfare, information warfare, psychological warfare, etc.? I'm the author of multiple books on this subject, and a lot of people throw around the word cognitive warfare as a placeholder for things like psyops, etc. And I was surprised to find that Wikipedia didn't even have a page on it, and for this reason, I had to write the article for them. So by the time this video is released, the article should be up, and I implore everyone to go check it out. And if you have any improvements at all that you would like to make to it, please do so. Throughout my 7 years, this presentation, my books, the wiki article, and all the other research that I've done in this field is meant to give a better understanding of cognitive warfare and cognitive operations and its negative effects on democracy and mental health. And I've witnessed its dangerous effects firsthand and prevented political violence because of it. This research is crucial. Other than a very small circle of NATO members, defense advisors, and academics, I'm alone on this. The world has to get ahead of it. And in a moment, we'll see why. So with that, let's get into it. Cognitive warfare. Cognitive warfare is any military activities which specifically focus on manipulating perceptions, beliefs, and decision-making processes to alter cognitive brain function. This has been referred to by NATO Commander Paul Grostad as, quote, hacking the OODA loop, end quote. While cognitive warfare is a form of psyop that utilizes propaganda, disinformation, etc., it distinguishes itself from other information-related activities by its objective. Quote, its goal is not what individuals think, but rather the way they think, end quote. And this is according to NATO General Ruggiero. Cognitive warfare refers to the way that human thought, reasoning, sense-making, decision-making, and behavior may be engineered through not only the manipulation of information, but also by the AI machine learning network of algorithms which push information through the bloodstream of the internet. Other methods of cognitive warfare include the targeted use of inaudible sound waves and microwaves to incapacitate enemy forces by disrupting the neurological functions of human targets without causing visible injury. And this specific method of cognitive warfare is a form of directed energy known as infrasound or neurostrike weapons. Difference between cognitive warfare and other information-related activities. Cognitive warfare evolves as an extension of information warfare and psychological operations. Operations in the information environment are traditionally conducted in 5 core capabilities: electronic warfare, psychological operations, military deception, operational security, and computer network operations. So, on one hand, information warfare aims at controlling the flow of information in support of traditional military objectives, mainly to produce lethal effects on the battlefield. But on the other hand, cognitive warfare degrades the capacity to know and produce foreknowledge, transforming the understanding and interpretations of situations by individuals and in the mass consciousness. Rather than weapons of mass destruction, scholars such as Dr. James Giordano call this form of warfare, quote, weapons of mass disruption, end quote, or WMD squared. And for this reason, academics such as myself have called this, quote, the contemporary age of mutually assured destruction, end quote. Cognitive warfare weaponry. When waged online, cognitive warfare starts with data. When data is matched with personally identifiable information, or PII, artificial intelligence predictive models can determine your private traits and attributes such as personality and behavioral vulnerabilities. Using this psychological and psychographic profile, an influence campaign is created and adjusted in real time by AI machine learning models until the desired cognitive and behavioral effects on the individual and/or the population are achieved. These influence campaigns used in cognitive warfare and cognitive operations are executed through the private influence industry known as strategic communications, or STRATCOM. Strategic communications is utilized in multiple sectors as a method of advertising and public relations. So, while cognitive warfare refers to these activities when used in military settings, cognitive operations are not exclusive to the military ward. There are multiple methods used to achieve the desired effects in cognitive brain function through strategic communications. Two of the most notable being micro-targeting and attitudinal inoculation. The effects of cognitive warfare and cognitive operations online are achieved through attitudinal inoculation by using information for a conflicting purpose. By using weak counter-arguments in the support of a narrative, the receiver seeks out identity-supporting information that further strengthens their threatened position, thus building psychological preservance mechanisms such as confirmation bias. The held opinion, attitude, interpretation of events, etc., then becomes resistant to a stronger attack, and hence the medical terminology referring to a vaccine. This methodology significantly increases the resilience of audiences and enables them to withstand any attempts from others to change their opinions, decisions, interpretation of events, etc. Micro-targeting is a suggestive recommender algorithm, or SERA. It's similar to native algorithms on a website that promote related content and suggested media based on not only what you like, but also what people like who are similar to you. And in the case of micro-targeting, rather than a user being provided content based on what a website's algorithms predicted they will like, they're also micro-targeted messages from the website's sponsors. Websites essentially give this capability to the highest bidder as an advertising technique. But not all sponsored material are labeled as such, and not all strategic communication campaigns are designed to look like advertisements, primarily in political and military stratcoms. When an audience is only micro-targeted information that they are most likely to resonate with, they are algorithmically segmented into what's known as online echo chambers, which don't allow the group to see a conflicting counterbalance of content. Algorithmically segmenting audiences into echo chambers has defensive and offensive military applications. In military counter-operations such as counterinsurgency, the doctrine calls to separate and isolate populations from one another both physically and psychologically. Not only does this prevent the threat network from recruiting neutral and friendly populations, but it assists in the development of psychological preservance mechanisms like confirmation bias. Quote, significantly, the methodology increases the resilience of susceptible audiences and enables them to withstand foreign propaganda effects, end quote. And this is according to a NATO article on this behavioral change science. In doing so, this helps counterinsurgents and third-party counterinsurgents leverage the population and operational environment against the threat network. But there are sociological and psychological side effects to these algorithms occurring in native suggestive recommender systems and in micro-targeting alike. Decades of peer-reviewed research show that echo chambers in the physical world and online cause asymmetric and political polarization, extremism, confusion, dissonance, negative emotional responses such as fear, anger, etc., reactance, microaggressions, and third-party effects. And because of these psychological preservance mechanisms like confirmation bias, this can be very problematic based on the work of Nian and Reifler. Nian and Reifler found that even attempting to correct false beliefs often reinforces rather than dispels these beliefs amongst those who hold them most strongly. And this is known as the backfire effect. Quote, in which corrections actually increase misperceptions, end quote, whereby, through confirmation bias, these mechanisms utilized in military counter-operations actually lead to the backfire effect and exacerbate the very issues they are attempting to counter: extremism, dissonance, polarization, etc. Miss Anna Vladimirova Krikova is an associate of NATO Stratcom and data protection officer at Cobalt, Latvia. When speaking at the 2019 Riga Stratcom dialogue on strategic communications in cognitive warfare settings, she asserts, quote, "Micro-targeting really exists and its micro effects also exist. And yes, it can actually impact you and the whole society," end quote. Anna continues at this NATO conference, quote, "In the case of micro-targeting, we really can manipulate the minds of people, and this can lead to very serious results and very serious problems, to wars and very serious conflicts, biases, and can also impact lives, and can lead to losing lives. Or it can endanger lives, and unfortunately I had such cases in my practice, so it's really happening," end quote. Because these tactics are completely clandestine in nature, this has blurred the threshold in terms of reacting to these threats. While cognitive warfare and cognitive operations may be conducted online using the aforementioned methods, cognitive warfare can also be waged through the use of sound weapons. China's People's Liberation Army has now officially incorporated the use of sound weapons into its arsenal of cognitive warfare weaponry, according to an intelligence report. Like the aforementioned methods of cognitive warfare, sound weapons also incapacitate enemy forces by disrupting the neurological functions of human targets without causing visible injury. This has been referred to as, quote, infrasound, end quote. Infrasound distinguishes itself from the other means of cognitive warfare by targeting individuals directly, rather than employ methods that rely on other media for impact. This is a subcategory of cognitive warfare weaponry known as neurostrike weapons. Objectives of cognitive warfare and downstream effects. Objectives of cognitive warfare are to shape/control the enemy's cognitive thinking and decision-making, to manipulate and degrade a nation's values, emotions, national spirit, cultural traditions, historical beliefs, political will, etc. To achieve adversarial strategic geopolitical objectives without fighting, to influence human/societal reasoning, thinking, emotions, etc., aligned with specific objectives, and degrade a population's trust in their institutions. In doing so, this allows for the weakening/disruption of military, political, and societal cohesion, and undermining/threatening of democracy. Cognitive warfare is also used to leverage extremist groups to create chaos, political violence, and crisis. Through cognitive warfare, cultural genocide can be facilitated by targeting cognitive biases to create hate and generate racism. Cognitive warfare has also been used by authoritarian societies to restructure society and groom populations to accept, quote, continuous surveillance, end quote. Through cognitive warfare, this allows these authoritarian societies to, quote, remove individuals/outliers who resist and insist on freedom of speech, independent thinking, etc., end quote. Some of the harmful effects of cognitive warfare can be mitigated with cognitive security, cognitive resilience through educational training in areas such as critical thinking, media literacy, awareness of these capabilities, and other relevant topics. Cognitive domain or cognitive dimension. Traditionally, there are 5 domains of war where military actions are taken: air, land, sea, space, and cyberspace. These are spaces where warfare is traditionally waged. Actions taken in these domains aim to achieve effects in one or more of the 3 dimensions of war: the human dimension, the physical dimension, and the information dimension. But because, quote, the brain is and will be the 21st century battlescape, end quote, Western scholars and defense circles are now torn between the addition of a new domain, some calling it the cognitive domain and others the human domain. And the Chinese military has already made their own determination, deciding on the cognitive domain, with all activities therein known as Cognitive Domain Operations, or CDO. History of cognitive warfare weaponry. Cognitive warfare weaponry has multiple agnostic applications, including commercial, political, and covert information warfare and cognitive warfare military operations. Gary Bonnick Jr. was the first to publish the DARPA origins of this weaponry, exactly how it is deployed, and its impacts on mental health and democracy. DARPA began research and development on, quote, sentiment detection and opinion mining, end quote, for, quote, influence operations, end quote, using automated and semi-automated systems on July 11th of 2010 in a program called Social Media in Strategic Communications, or SMISC. Cognitive warfare and cognitive operations are waged through the private influence industry known as strategic communications, or STRATCOM. The scope of DARPA's SMISC program was to create automated/semi-automated systems with regard to, quote, influence operations, end quote, for the purposes of, quote, inducing identities, end quote, which is engineering behavior through identity politics, also modeling these, quote, emergent communities, end quote, creating, quote, bots in social media, end quote, automated content generation, end quote, sentiment detection and opinion mining, end quote, crowdsourcing, end quote, and, quote, narrative structure analysis, end quote, etc. The directorate of the U.S. National Science Foundation, Erwin Gyanshadani, who has published extensively and presented at numerous international conferences on the subject of computational systems and modeling of biological networks, has called this DARPA SMISC program, quote, warfare from social media, end quote. Just after the start of this SMISC program, DARPA, the intelligence community, and Boeing Phantom Works began funding research at the University of Cambridge, also for sentiment detection and opinion mining. This research began the breakthrough of determining private traits and attributes from digital records of human behavior. This allowed DARPA's SMISC platform the capability to target based on metrics of mental health gauged by a Big 5 Ocean score. An Ocean score is a metric used by clinicians to diagnose personality and behavioral disorders and/or vulnerabilities. After the military-funded technology was built, Cambridge University opened up a for-profit spin-off of its psychometric center called Cambridge Personality Research. This wing of the university offered something called, quote, preference, end quote, to political clients. For a fee, this wing of Cambridge University would leverage people's data that it had gathered for academic purposes from Facebook, Twitter, etc., and target political audiences based on metrics of mental health, amongst other categorical variables. Other than the military-industrial complex, Facebook also partnered on this early cognitive research, and it was Facebook that ended up with the patent for it. The technology inevitably found its way to the premier NATO military contractor known as SCL Group. This contractor amalgamated this ocean modeling in with its own version of the SMISC weapon, which it called their Rip-On platform. Until 2015, there was only one private military contractor in the world licensed to deploy weapons-grade communications tactics, SCL Group. It was deemed, quote, weapons-grade communications tactics, end quote, and export controlled by the British government. The founder and owner of this premier NATO military contractor also founded and owned the UK-based Influence Advisory Council, advising on influence standards and reviewing best practices of allied governments. In 2015, the UK government lifted this export designation. Just before this company then bypassed US election laws to deploy these weapons-grade tactics on behalf of the Donald Trump campaign in the 2016 US presidential election through a front-facing shell company known as Cambridge Analytica. This is according to the UK Parliament. During this 2016 presidential campaign, This premier NATO contractor targeted those who scored highly neurotic on their ocean profiles, specifically targeting conspiratorial-minded individuals having paranoid ideations with fear-based information and disinformation. A whistleblower from the company named Christopher Wiley came forward and explained on multiple occasions why this demographic was being targeted with these cognitive warfare tactics. Quote, with the view that these were the people that Steve Bannon would be able to use in order to spark an insurgency in the United States, end quote. Less than 2 years after his statements, the United States saw what was determined to be an insurrection at the U.S. Capitol building in Washington, D.C., a trait of an insurgency. During the presidential transition period, just weeks after the 2016 U.S. presidential election, Obama's State Department signed a contract with this same military contractor to adopt its strategies for the Global Engagement Center to counter violent extremism and disinformation. According to this December 2016 no-bid contract for the Department of State's Global Engagement Center, the State Department says that, quote, in sum, after 6 years of research and countless demonstrations by companies wishing to sell their services, the Global Engagement Center is not aware of any companies which approach the sophistication and effectiveness of SCL in designing data-driven influence campaigns that demonstrably work, end quote. The front-facing shell company was brought to the attention of U.S. Congress, but the single hearing that they had on the matter consisted of data privacy protection rather than what was being done with the data. Congress was led to believe that the military technology used in cognitive operations was snake oil, despite the aforementioned State Department comments and its premier status in the field of strategic communications for NATO. Because this front-facing shell company of SCL Group went defunct just prior to this hearing, U.S. Congress felt that no action should be taken to investigate the matter further, despite the UK Parliament determining, quote, SCL's alleged undermining of democracies in many countries by the active manipulation of the facts and events was happening alongside work done by SCL Group on behalf of the UK government, the US government, and other allied governments. We do not have the remit or the capacity to investigate these claims ourselves, end quote. Some of the sources and links used for this presentation are in the description. At least 5,000 characters worth or whatever YouTube allows. If you have some additional information on this topic, feel free to go to the Wikipedia article I just posted on cognitive warfare and add it. And that's the great thing about Wikipedia. Everyone in the community can make it better. So raise awareness and just make sure they're official sources, please. Some of my sources are NATO and Army War College presentations, but they're on YouTube, and that's okay as long as it's academic. Primary sources. And that wraps up this brief presentation on cognitive warfare and cognitive operations. And if you enjoyed it, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and make sure you share this video. That's a big part of mitigating the dangerous effects of cognitive warfare, is simply knowing that these tactics exist, and that when this is waged online, this happens through your IP address. Even people who don't use social media can be targeted, stalked across the internet, sometimes for years, according to NATO, until the desired effects are achieved on cognitive brain function and behavior. So share this video, give it a like, leave a bunch of emojis in the comments, and stay tuned. Have a good night.